Are you a scaling SaaS founder?
Ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds and those who don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, 5-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Welcome back to the SaaS Fuel podcast. We're cutting through market noise is like flying a neon kite in a thunderstorm. Everyone's looking up and they just can't help but notice. I'm your host, Jeff Maines. I help B2B SaaS founders like you grow from traction to scale. Here, growth is more than just numbers. It's about crafting a future-proof company, premium valuation, and leaders who build a business of significance while living epic, adventurous lives. Do you know that 92% of SaaS companies are increasing their marketing budgets in 2025 to stay competitive? The key to standing out isn't spending more, it's getting creative with your marketing tactics. So whether you spend a little bit or a lot, you can stand out. In today's saturated SaaS market, companies need more than just great products. I'll bet you can name a mediocre product that sells like crazy and probably a competing product that's awesome, but maybe a little bit unknown. And maybe it's yours. I can think of at least 20 companies like that, that's something really great and they're getting beat in the market by something that is inferior. Product alone isn't enough. They have to combine that great product with innovative marketing tactics that cut through the noise. So let's dive into how some of the most successful SaaS companies are using unique approaches to drive growth and get ahead. The market is crowded as the zoo on Free Kids Day and twice as chaotic. Sometimes you're not even sure what that noise is, right? New competitors are popping up daily. Traditional marketing methods, paid ads, generic email blasts, it's just not enough anymore. Many companies are finding they need to be more strategic, more authentic, more engaging in order to build a loyal customer base. But the question remains, how do you differentiate yourself in a sea of SaaS offerings without breaking the bank? Here are 3 innovative marketing tactics that successful SaaS startups are using to stand out and grow in this hyper-competitive space. The first is content marketing that educates. Leading SaaS companies are using content to position themselves as industry experts. Instead of just pushing product features, they focus on educating their audience. And so it could be that it's product adjacent, some way to use a product, whether it's theirs or another one. A lot of times, this is just industry information that somebody needs or could use no matter what product they're using. So it's not necessarily even related to product. And this includes, in-depth blogs, could be webinars, white papers, even launching industry podcasts. By delivering valuable content, they attract high quality leads who are already primed to see the value of their solutions. And this works 100% of the time when it's done well. Examples that you would know, HubSpot, they do fantastic at this. Last I looked, it was about 13% of their sales came from content, like directly from their content and their blogs. Another 25% from SEO, and that's all related to their content. Other ones, Buffer is a good example. Eric Sue over at Single Grain, fantastic content. Limlist, G does a great job with that. Marketo, Databox, Moz, it's killer stuff and it's all valuable, whether you use their product or not. Is they're really just engaging the audience and educating. They are thought leaders, they are experts. The second is social media engagement with personality. I think that's the key right there, right? SaaS startups are getting personal on social media. They use platforms like LinkedIn and Twitter, not just to promote, but to engage with their audience through humor, behind the scenes content, and meaningful conversations. By showing their human side, companies build stronger connections and foster brand loyalty that translates into long-term growth. A few people who do this really well, Lavender. If you guys know Will and Will, they are absolute genius with the Lavender guy, just absolutely brilliant. Other ones, 2 that I think do it exceptionally well, Adam Robinson. A lot of you know him, retention.com and RB2B. Another one is Lysiana Carter from Grow AI. Both of them do so well at this and engaging. Both of them have been guests on the podcast. If you don't know them, go listen to their episodes. Go follow them on LinkedIn. Absolutely brilliant content. I need to do more on the human side myself. They really inspire me to up my game because people want to do business with people they like. And letting that personal side through just endears people and it increases that like factor. And the third is personalized customer experiences. Personalization is absolutely key. And I don't mean just hello, first name in the email, or hey, I saw that you went to this random school 25 years ago, buddy. That's weird personalization. No, what we want to do is the most successful SaaS companies are using customer data to tailor marketing messages that are irrelevant. It's offers to individual needs, and whether that is through targeted email campaigns, those still work. Customized onboarding experiences, absolutely huge. AI-driven recommendations, personalization makes prospects feel understood and valued. That's the important part of that, valued. Driving engagement and, of course, higher conversion rates, which is what we're after. It could be a different buyer journey for a CFO than a CTO. Different content, dynamic pages, remembering who they are when they come back, tailoring that journey to them, optimizing the experience because you already know who they are and what they're probably here for, right? So be thinking about this now. And it could seem it's huge. Start small, do a little bit every day. Yeah, a prime example of innovative marketing comes from the SaaS company Drift. A lot of you guys know Drift. They took a really unique approach, ditching traditional forms like the contact us form and demo request forms and that. And what they did is they implemented conversational marketing strategy using chatbots. And by engaging visitors in real time and then personalizing the experience, Drift was able to generate qualified leads faster and increase their conversions. Definitely an innovative shift that transformed their marketing and positioned them as a leader in conversational marketing. A little bit of the irony is that's what they do. So it's a demo in itself. And you probably know the end of the story, the end anyway. They were acquired earlier this year by SalesLoft. Great company, but very innovative in just thinking about how to engage the web visitors. So innovative tactics can make all the difference in helping your SaaS rise above the competition. And again, you may think, who's got time to do it all? And you don't have to do it all. Start with one. Do it consistently. Do it. Yeah, in the beginning, I promise it will feel like dropping spare change in a jar. And you're like, wow, shaking it in those 2 quarters, that didn't do much. But over time, the jar fills up. It's the same thing. You do one podcast episode and you're like, yay, there's one. But over time, you can do it consistently over and over again, and you're at like 221. But it will never happen if you don't get started. The time to start is right now. Our expert last week was Jocko Vanderkoy, founder of Winning by Design, master SaaS sales strategist, and author of 8 best-selling books, including his latest called Revenue Architecture. Just came out on audio about a month ago on my birthday. A very good book. We talked about sales mistakes, selling at different business stages, building teams, and most importantly, turning your sales org into a revenue factory. Jocko is the real deal, and it was an exceptionally valuable conversation, not only for you, but for me as well. Our founder last Tuesday was Renan Devian, serial entrepreneur and founder of OSS Ventures, where he helps manufacturers digitize their production sites. We talked about non-obvious opportunities, where to find them, problem validation, profitability, and social responsibility, and wrap things up with AI-driven decision making. If you missed either one of those episodes, go back and give them a listen. Absolute gold. My guest today is Clay Sharman, founder and CEO of Krateo AI. They're an innovative AI-driven platform transforming the way businesses engage prospects. With nearly 2 decades of experience in developing technology solutions for the federal sector and selling AI and ML-based solutions to the DoD and national security agencies, Clay brings a wealth of expertise in bridging the gap between cutting-edge tech and real-world experience. Welcome, Clay Sharman. Hey, Clay, welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Jeff, great to see you again. Thanks for having me.
Tell me a little bit about your journey from the federal government and selling AI machine learning solutions now to founding SaaS company Krateo.
Sure. I'm happy to report it's not quite as wacky as that sounds when you just say it out loud. But yeah, I spent a long part of my career, the early part of my career, on the hardware side of the house, doing sort of risk assessments, gap analysis on modernizing software for the government. So a lot of legacy equipment, a legacy software movement, and then fixing things so that they could be upgraded. That was a slow, painful process, but it did get me into things like the Department of Defense, who is a little
Sure.
bit more forward looking in terms of technology. And I spent a good bit of time working with AI and ML early days software solutions for the Department of Defense. I did a little bit of work with the national security agencies on inside threat detection, which is ultimately where I started to see the correlation between how you might identify a potential bad actor and then start looking at anonymity as a commercial kind of opportunity. So I can see a direct path in terms of how we arrived at this, but it really was just getting my teeth cut at AI ML from the federal space and then learning what commercial opportunities could be monetized, or I won't use the term exploited, but I did see a major gap in the commercial space when it came to online shopping versus online conversion. And we'll talk about that. I'm
Sure, sure. So tell me about that. How did you take that experience and then apply it to the commercial sector? What specifically does Crateo do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the long and short of it is anonymous web traffic makes up the bulk of traffic for any e-commerce company or
Yep.
any e-commerce and retail brand. So up to 98% of people who come on to a website stay anonymous, which means 98 out of 100 potential online shoppers come in, look around, browse, and then leave without taking any action. So we really wanted to explore a way to see if we could help brands re-engage with some portion of that 98% and give them kind of a second bite at the apple and ultimately potentially create like a second revenue funnel that they could grow a customer relationship with. It might take a little bit longer, but I think the dividends would pay manifold once you got into some long range relationship building.
Oh, absolutely. And that's true across the board in SaaS, and whether it's product-led growth or sales-led. So many visitors come to the website and then do whatever they do, and some bounce, some will look at some pages, maybe go to a form and nah, I'm not really going to fill that in right now, and then disappear.
That's right.
So saving those and really building a relationship with them, I think that's what we all want.
Yeah, I think we'll get into this too, but I think the idea of taking a store visitor, whether they're online or in store, you want to have an opportunity to build a relationship with them. And this notion that this super high percentage of shoppers, which is what an online browser is, don't take action. You as a brand owner, you certainly want to get to know them. And so yeah, 100% agree with that. The idea is let's build relationships, let's put some trust and loyalty back into the experience for that online shopper who doesn't want to, maybe they won't feel so guarded if you know that the brand you're working with is responsible and is treating you like a person versus a transaction, which was a major emphasis for what we want to promote at Crateo.
Sure. What have been some of the big challenges in bringing the product to market, especially in the context of, say, data privacy and accuracy?
You hit the nail on the head with both. I would add a third kind of leg to that stool and call data recency being the other kind of primary driver. Data privacy is all about being responsible and ethical with how we as data owners handle the data that we're entrusted with. And first and foremost, it's incumbent on us to do the right thing. And that's easier said than done. And so that's the responsibility of the data owners. Data accuracy is a very interesting one, right? That's been a root problem for online data for since the very early genesis of the online experience, because data goes out of date very quickly online, and people
Sure.
move, they change jobs, they change addresses, they can change emails. So there's a lot of things that play into it that you don't really deal with in brick and mortar. So data accuracy, obviously, that was a major challenge. And then what we found, the other correlating variable in that is that data recency plays a major role in data accuracy. If it's not recent, it's probably not accurate. And so we had to solve both of those problems simultaneously in order to come up with this confidence vector that we can put forward to say, hey, we have a very high confidence that this is the right person in order for you to speak to them. So obviously, we don't want to add to the problem of spam. So accuracy and recency are huge, and protecting people's privacy is paramount. But we also do want to empower the brands with good data so that they can actually go out and learn more about these shoppers and try to meet the needs of these shoppers in a way that would be more meaningful for them.
Makes sense. And how did you see this as what kind of research did you do in really bringing this to market and say, hey, this is a need and I think that we can solve it?
I think first and foremost, the market research industry thinking heads were already talking about this long in advance of identity resolution software or anonymous visitor engagement software. Gartners or McKinsey's or Forrester's, they were already talking about the need for better kind of privacy enactment, better marketing strategies, these things that were going to allow a more personalized experience, which is there's a term that's become sort of ubiquitous: personalization, hyper targeting, these type of things. Then the competitive space itself, how fast it began to grow, was a little bit more. You started to see people were thinking about this. So now the question was, can they, whoever they is, solve it? And so one of the reasons Cradio exists is because I personally simply wasn't seeing the solution solving enough of the problem. They were targeting a symptom and then not the disease. And the disease is a much bigger kind of play, which is how do we provide high quality data that's got meaningful insights, which are real, and then allow a brand to get to real consumer shopper understanding. It was a genesis. Like we had to walk through the steps. A, what's out there? B, is it any good? How do we determine what's good? It's mainly how accurate, how often do they refresh? And then C, is anybody leading the market in terms of the impression? Can you just go out and was there an Apple or a Microsoft in this space? And there's not. And so
Makes sense.
we see a huge opportunity there. Yeah.
And how did you decide your go-to-market strategy? Is it sales led? Is it product led? And how did you go about making the determination of how to come to market?
Yeah, great question. Because when we started thinking about who could use it, then the answer was anybody in the
That's everybody, anybody
right.
with a website.
So we wanted to look at people who were probably losing out the most on opportunities with direct to consumer interaction. So retail space was a good one. We did spend the first 18 months essentially using the product as our go to market strategy. So introducing it to small and larger brands, getting feedback, talking to digital marketing agencies, talking to ad tech agencies, and getting feedback on the features, the usefulness. We tried to do it the right way, right? Some kind of focus group strategies where we just got initial kind of impressions. Notionally, is the concept solid? And then B, does the platform deliver on the promise, which was, of course, paramount for us. So we've shifted now, and now we're into the kind of industry attack marketing strategy. So our go to market now is get some brand awareness and really introduce accessibility now to the group through education, and then ease of implementation, which is another piece of our go to market strategy. Is how fast can you get on? Pretty fast.
That's key. As
Right.
tech solutions don't do you any good unless they're implemented.
Right.
Well, what sets your solution apart from other platforms? I mean, there's Klaviyo or Pearl Diver, and how do you compete in that marketplace and really stand out?
Yeah, that's the obvious great question in this conversation. And the answer is Cradio takes a real full, I'll call it a circular view of the buyer journey. So when you come on board, when you interact, if you and I stay anonymous, and as you rightly pointed out, people will come on, they'll stay for a little bit, they'll look at a few things, they'll do some stuff, and then they leave. And so you'll get the, oh, okay, I I know somebody was here. I just don't know how to talk to them. So we wanted to
Right.
be able to give you that front part, right? Which is what your typical analysis software can do. And so there are a lot of competitors that do that. And then we wanted to be able to kind of track them when they came back in. So our solution looks at kind of three things, right? How did they engage when they initially arrived? What type of campaign response do they give to whatever tactic that would bring them back? And then what are the sources and channels that they're interacting with on kind of an ongoing regular basis that would allow us to move them into kind of an AI generated audience? And then that audience is what we promote to the brand. Hey, this is an audience of email users who have high engagement with these type of campaigns.
Mm.
And so you're getting a little bit more of a full digital footprint of not just how they interact, but we tell you who they are at the outset, and then we watch them all the way through, including how they respond, and we score how they respond, and then we score what channels and sources they're interacting with. So you get three kind of tiers of scoring that updates as they change their behavior, or as we find that we're more accurate or less accurate, we adjust. So that's one of the continuous improvement is a major differentiator for us, Jeff, because we really wanted to be able to not just be a point in time solution. We wanted to be a kind of evolving solution. As desires and needs change, we wanted a software solution that could run with that as well.
That's pretty impressive. Is just adapting the approach based on engagement, because ultimately that's what we want. Is we're looking for that engagement.
That's
And
right.
so it's like a game of tennis. We're hitting a ball over and we want them to hit it back. And we hit a ball and nothing happens. Then it's time to tweak the approach a little bit and do something different. So maybe our assumptions at the beginning weren't perfect. And so you're iterating over time and getting better until we get them to engage.
That's a perfect way. Actually, it's a perfect analogy too, this tennis match of a sort, because we are volleying back and forth. The idea is somebody hitting the return back to us so we can keep the volley going. And that's a
Right.
great way of looking at it. So yeah, campaign engagement, right? That's our goal. So we want to find out who in this nebulous group of anonymity is likely to hit that ball back across the net so we can keep the game going. And then you'll learn how they play, you'll learn their instincts, and that understanding ultimately it's the relationship building that you have with I'll call them your player, in this case, your tennis match partner. But in the retail space, it's exactly the same. The more you interact with them, the better you understand them. And again, how they were last week or how they are next week as the holiday season's coming into play can shift what their needs and goals are. And we want to make sure that we're able to help forecast and keep you ahead of that as much as possible. So you're not always chasing them. We'd love for brands to be in sync with that online shopper to build that online shopping experience.
That's really helpful, just having that feedback loop. So you're able to create things, whether it's content or offers or whatever it is that your audience is looking for. And so the more you understand them, the more you have that data, the better you can create those things.
Yeah, and I think ultimately when you get to that point of kind of inertia where you're understanding their online tendencies and behavior, you can actually lift it up even a higher level and start thinking about new product fit, new
Mm,
markets that you might be exploring because your online shoppers may be telling you something that you're missing out on and giving you an opportunity to expand your service offerings at that point. So there's a lot of strategic planning that could occur if you knew what this large group was actually thinking or was looking for, and they're just not getting it today.
right. And historically, I think some of this data probably exists out there, but it's the big data providers that hold it. I mean, Google has a ton of data about all of us, Facebook and some of the other big companies kind of hold that data, and maybe we can get a little bit of it or get access to it for a fee or run ads and those kinds of
Right.
things. But this seems to democratize that a lot more and really put it in the hands of the brands themselves instead of having to go to the big guys.
I think maybe that could be the most kind of prescient thing that we push out of this podcast, Jeff, is it's hard to create a relationship that's meaningful if you're putting a third party mediator in between you to actually run the
Right.
relationship. If you tried doing that in the real world, it would be likely a Will Ferrell or Adam Sandler movie. There'd be a lot of comedy there, but at the end of the day, it's just a movie. And so I think in the real world, having the direct relationship is really key. And so I think that's ultimately that's our goal, is how do we help you and I interact directly rather than trust that Google or Facebook or Amazon is doing the work in our best interest so that you have a great experience with Krateo. And so if we remove that middleman, it could be that we find out a few things that these data providers choose not to share with us for whatever their reasons are, but it may not be in
Sure.
our best interest.
Sure. There's been a lot in the news in the last certainly 6 months, year about cookies and third party cookies, first party, and a shift away from third party cookies in the industry. How does Cradio fit into that? And what do you see as far as data privacy, data cookies, those kinds of things in the future? What does the world look like?
I think data privacy, for good or ill, and I think for the most part it is for good, but the downside is there's a barrier between a brand and a consumer as a result of data privacy fear. And I don't think that's going away. And so third-party cookies, I don't think this is controversial. If it is, that's fine because my opinion holds. I think third-party cookies are the reason why data privacy laws had to come into being, because a
Sure.
third-party cookie played the role of 24/7, 365 telemarketer at all points of the day through any channels it could find, in which case it was very invasive and was probably the only way to do things initially at the very advent of online e-commerce with the web. But this would have gone back 30 years now. And so there's been very little progress, even though technology has leaped ahead, essentially taking us further into the future, especially with AI. Now, we really haven't changed our strategy on data. So we've built this huge ocean of data. But now, if you and I jump onto the ocean and we have a nice boat and our fishing rods, how does that help us find the fish? It's just,
Right.
if we used to fish in a lake or a pond or a stream, that was a little bit easier. But now we're all kind of fishing in this ocean, and the ocean's huge. So getting to the right data is critical. And I think third-party cookies have a lot of responsibility for the garbage that's in this ocean. And regardless of Google's determination to deprecate third-party cookies, and I think at some point they may still, the shift to personalization and hyper-targeting or customer relationship building can't occur in the third-party space. And so it doesn't matter if brands want to compete, if brands want to actually evolve, they're going to have to get into the first party world. So Krateo is a first party only solution. We don't use third party cookies as any of our data support. And there are companies out there that are joining us in that battle. We are all trying to do things the right way, which I think is improve the data story so that the data outcomes are beneficial to the consumer. I think when we shift away from conversions and we start looking at meaningful experience for the consumer, I think that's when everybody's going to start winning.
Ready to future proof your company and scale to new heights? Dive into the ultimate resource designed for SaaS founders and C suite executives. Champion Leadership Group gives you an unfair advantage in scaling up revenue and outwitting competitors. Imagine solving your biggest scaling headaches and hitting 5, 10, 20 million ARR and beyond with ease. We take away the guesswork and the grunt work and replace it with framework by supporting you with our on demand fractional C suite team, a powerful operating system built into software, and a thriving community of fellow scaling founders. That's how we make it happen. So if you're stuck at your current revenue level, this is your ticket out. Feel like your company is the world's best kept secret? We amplify your success. And hey, if you're already crushing it but too busy to breathe, we've got your back. We'll free up 20% of your time in the first month. Now is the time to upgrade from traction to scale. If you're ready to work smarter and not just grind harder, schedule a 10-minute growth brainstorm. It's free. You can't buy anything on the call. I'm not selling you anything, but we will pinpoint the number one thing blocking revenue. To learn more, visit championleadership.com. That's where leaders evolve and companies transform.
And that makes a lot of sense. And it is certainly a shift, particularly from a founder, CEO perspective or a marketing perspective.
Right.
Instead of just trying to convert, how can I really focus on finding out who that is and convert them and get them to buy more sooner. But it's really creating that experience for them where it's not a sales process, it's a buying process. So you're giving them those opportunities and helping them buy in a way that they want to.
Yeah, that shift is critical for a lot of purposes. But I think when you think about the amount of choices that you and I have as consumers, every day we get more and more opportunity to have choice, which means it's difficult, more difficult for a brand to retain loyalty or build relationships. And so if brands refuse, and there will be some, of course, to think of things as anything but a transaction, it won't be long before they keep wondering why the competitor license plate keeps getting further ahead of them and they can't see them anymore because they're going to get left behind. And I think things like lifetime value and customer satisfaction are becoming much more kind of paramount to key performance indicators in terms of what a brand's kind of perception in the marketplace or a brand's reality in the marketplace. it really should start with customer satisfaction and customer lifetime value. Those are great key performance indicators
Right.
versus how many conversions did I get yesterday. It's a very transaction kind of brute force way of looking, got nothing to do with relationship building.
Yeah. Now, are there businesses that are better served just by focusing only on transactions versus relationship, or do you think relationship is the wave of the future, the wave of now?
I think so. Again, as long as third-party cookies exist, there will be people who want to take advantage of this idea of the data is cheap to access and I can get high volume output and maybe I'll get very low volume results, but results are, paramount to the bottom line. But I do see in the future where AI continues to play a role in helping drive decision making and at speed. If you continue to think of things strictly transactionally, there'll be a kind of a tipping point where that model will age itself out and go extinct. And so I think first party solutions absolutely, and there's a term called zero party solutions now, which is an even more voluntary kind of data provided. So first party, zero party solutions are cropping up because at the end of the day, it is what you and I want as consumers. We want a trusted experience with brands that aren't going to sell our data to everybody so that we can get inundated with terrible spam and all the
Right.
wrong ads. Right.
We definitely want to know who the visitors are on our websites, and that is certainly a problem. Another problem, so probably anybody with a website is dealt with this, is bot traffic.
Absolutely.
And there's lots and lots of that. So how do you isolate those and avoid bot traffic and accurately report on users, and then also those who maybe opt out?
Right. Great questions. Well, I think first and foremost, everybody who is doing any kind of market data collection needs to be thinking of the question you just put forward. So, how do we identify and then exclude bots first and foremost? So, we look at a lot of things. We use a triangulation technology approach from a bunch of multiple data sources. And we're able to triangulate on at least 3 different data sources that confirm the person's a person and not a bot. So the tool Krateo is designed to not include any bot traffic. And that's intentional, right? Because bots are useless in terms of marketing and
Right.
retargeting.
Not going to sell them anything.
Yeah. And then the other thing, of course, is it's important for, compliance to the CCPA regulations that anybody who's collecting data give all online shoppers the opportunity to opt out. So once that happens and one of our brands has a web shopper who comes in and says, I don't want to have market collecting. All right, that's fine with us too. So we don't collect any data on anybody who expressly opts out. We only collect information on the people who have come through the consent banner and accept it all, or at least implied their accept all on consent. And we stay very up to date as you can. This is a moving target that changes every day on all data privacy things. And so we want to make sure, again, our whole goal is the ethical use of data so that I, Clay Sharman, get a better online shopping experience when I'm online, because that's what I want too. I don't want to be inundated with a bunch of bad ads just because the technology exists to do. I want all brands to do better.
Yeah. I think that's ultimately what we all want.
Right.
Yeah. So like that you're really building it for your own needs as well. What you want to experience out there in the world.
Yeah. If you look at it that way, I kept waiting, Jeff. I gave industry time to solve the problem and they didn't. And so then I thought, okay, then I guess I need to solve the problem myself. But I'm no fan of spam. I'm no fan of ads that don't serve to speak to me. And so if we can tweak it a little bit better, we're like, okay, we're on a 2% success rate in this market for all things strategy planning. If we could bump that 1% to 3, then we've increased a 50% improvement. We've introduced a 50% improvement into the market or an industry.
Yeah.
I'll take that impact.
That's huge.
Huge.
Yeah. Well, any key insights that you've uncovered about online traffic behavior and being able to translate those into actionable strategies for business?
Yeah. Leaning on industry research theories, we've been able to apply the theory and get practical results. And so what we've found pretty consistently is when you segment your prospects appropriately, when you're using kind of logic to build an audience and a strategy, your open rates go up. So we're seeing 25 to 40% open rates versus 15 to 20, which is typical for industry average. So up to 2 times the industry average in open rates. Click-through rates, it's more meaningful because once you've identified the right audience and you've tweaked your messages and you've got the right wording for it, we're seeing up to 7 times more click-through rates on.
Wow.
Yeah, it's exactly what you'd hope was the case. If your messaging is meaningful and thoughtful and appropriately personalized, then it shouldn't surprise you that you're getting more engagement. What I won't swear yet is how you can turn hyper targeting directly into a conversion, because again, we are talking about relationship building, and what we have discovered is there's a conversation that still has to occur, that for this unsure, not quite ready to take action audience, which again could be up to 98%. And so it really isn't. What we're finding is campaign messaging done properly is an invitation to come back and for them to share a little bit more and learn a bit more. And so it's a very nice symbiotic relationship between the brand and the unsure buyer. But what we do know for sure is the same tactic that brought the 2% success rate in is it doesn't work for the 98. Otherwise, they would have done it the first time.
Right.
So it requires, there's a deft touch that has to be initiated. But for sure, we can say empirically, when you use the appropriate strategies for geography, why would you send snow ads to people who live in Florida? You don't want
Right.
to do that, right? And you certainly don't want to send um, I don't know, mountain climbing gear to flat states. Florida, again, I'll pick on it. And when you use geography, things like that, when you use age range, when you use gender, when you can, it's a powerful motivator for interest. And so we can definitely tie attribution to interest and engagement for sure. So things work better when it looks like you're sincerely trying. So that's the
Yeah.
message I would say.
That makes a lot of sense. And I can certainly see that the big impact, especially when you talk about open rates like that, click-through rates, retail, e-tail, and e-commerce type
Right.
sites. But I think even more so in B2B,
Oh, yeah.
just because the dollars are quite a bit more, that the stakes are higher. And just thinking about the type of revenue growth that you could see from an increase like that in click-through rate and in SaaS.
Yeah. So there are really some instant indicators that we can impact right away. One is prospect acquisition costs. We can reduce it
Mm.
dramatically right out of the gate by increasing the funnel of prospects from your existing web traffic and giving you a way to retarget. It's a not just an incremental reduction; it's a meaningful reduction in acquisition cost. And then the other is, of course, what you just touched on, right? The return on that ad spend, because
Yeah.
by segmenting properly, we're getting more eyes on the right audience and not wasting the eyes on the bad audiences who are likely to not take any interest. And that continues to shrink down. Ideally, we think one of the things that would be very meaningful let's use Meta as a social media display opportunity. Meta has probably the most powerful personalization and data algorithms on earth. And we totally agree with that. But what we do posit, and we're currently building a use case around, is we create a very hyper targeted, engaged audience. And we use that for Meta to build a lookalike audience on as part of their ads.
Ah,
And so as these returning people come back, they've engaged with the campaign or the display, whatever, as they come back into that landing page to look at the offer, what Crateo can do is we can build the funnel around their activity of who not just came back or converted, but who left and where, or who abandoned at the cart stage. And then we can give that list of people who abandoned right back to the brands. And then they could retarget them with a different tactic. If they wanted to go back to another meta ad, they could. If they wanted to use a very localized email tactic, they could. But imagine, instead of saying to Facebook or Meta, send another 10,000 out and hopefully we'll catch some percentage of these abandoners. What if
right.
we gave you that 100 people who abandoned and you were able to re-engage with 100 and convert 25 of them. Suddenly you get this 25% conversion rate on a
That's
very
huge.
localized. It would be massive. And so that's back to your democratization of the data. That's one of the goals, right? Is to remove the mystery around the black box and let people be able to make meaningful decisions on interactions and engagement. So we think that's going to be an awesome use case. We'll be able to do that with Google ads as well. So it's going to be a nice way to make surgical decisions rather than broad stroke gut assumptions, or be left at the mercy of a large scale ad based kind of campaign every time you want to talk to 100 people.
Right. I think that's one of the things that the big ad companies, that's what they depend on, is you have to target 10,000 to find that 100.
That's right.
And so they make a bunch of money in all that waste, which just drives up our acquisition costs.
That's and unfortunately the brand pays the price, literally pays
Yeah.
the price, because what we're
Yes.
seeing in this competitive market space is it is a rising case, a rising cost for customer acquisition. And we want to at least minimize that, right? There are ways to minimize it, and hyper targeting and personalization and using practical AI technology to do predictive analytics is a great tool for maybe normalizing that model so you can forecast budgets instead of worrying each month about 8% rising costs for that CPM. So
Makes sense. But as we look forward to the future data privacy regulations, what are some best practices you recommend for companies in navigating that space for the
right.
future?
Yeah, great question. Probably the most important question you could ask at the early stages of understanding consumers. And we certainly recommend, although there's no mandate for it, first off, use a consent banner and be upfront.
Hmm.
Tell people that you collect data, tell them why you use it, give them the option to accept or not accept those conditions. So that's one, right? And then the second is, don't just use, because you now have access to a bunch of new names that came to your website. That should not be an invitation to overwhelm them with 3 or 4 or 5 emails every week inviting them to enjoy a discount on your goods or services.
Right.
So otherwise you're going to find yourself back where we all are trying to avoid. And so best practices for me would be follow the can spam laws, right? Make your subject line meaningful, make any copy relevant to the subject line, don't do a bait and switch, and give them a way out so that you can, now again, this is all about honesty and transparency. And if somebody wants to say no, give them the option to say no to future things. And then you've got to adopt that and understand not everybody's going to go in for this. So I think the best practices for any relationship online would be the same that I would tell my kids, or I put on myself, which is deal openly and fairly with the person if you want to make a relationship that's going to last and mean something. And so do the same thing. Again, I think when you stop thinking about people as a bottom line transaction and you start seeing the opportunity to understand them at a value proposition, like if you and I have a great experience, you're more likely to go tell your buddies about the experience you had with us.
Of course.
We absolutely want that type of warm referral based thing. That's how the world has always worked. The handyman gets the best jobs when he's referred by a very satisfied customer. We want that same experience for online shoppers. Best practices is pretty simple. Do unto others. There's no
Yeah.
secret to it. But tell people what you're doing up front. Don't hide it somewhere where it's hard to get to. Don't make unsubscribing an onerous task, because man, it really paints you in a shadowy light. And we're really
Right.
we're trying to shine lights on these shadows and just say, we want you to trust us, but we'll do better if you do.
I like that. And I think that's really good advice. Treat people in a digital relationship the same way you would in real life.
That's right.
And yeah, I think as marketers, we've forgotten that because it's really easy just to compose something and hit send and get that in front of 100,000 people really fast.
Yeah. Obviously there's an allure to that, right?
Yes.
The net fishing approach. I just think that the potential, I'll say reputational risk that you now put on the table is you're just simply egregiously shotgunning an approach to a practice that was going to yield small results. And as my dad would have told me, if you know the outcome is not going to be favorable, then you're the problem. That and you're not part of the solution. And I
Yeah.
happen to apply that sort of logic to this whole thing. I'd much rather, as you pointed out, I'd rather talk to the 100 who are really interested and not tick off the 9,900 who I know won't be. And so if
Right.
I can get closer to that 100 earlier, that's a win for all of us. That's a win for the 9,900 who don't have to click no. And it's a win for the 100 who we can get to faster. And so that's really the goal, right? Is to reframe our whole perspective. Let's just talk to the people who are most interested. And AI can help us determine who those people most likely are.
Makes sense. There's a lot more AI being used in prospecting and engagement and in so many different areas. How do you see that playing out over the next few years? And what are good AI use cases and what are some that maybe we should rethink?
But that's a great question, actually, because this is an easy road for us to turn left on instead of right.
Yeah.
And so I think where AI has been awesome already out of the gate, and it's fairly proven, is the ability to help with generating good content copy. I think it's done a great job of that, professionalizing the writing process for people in the world who may be intimidated by writing as a feature of their skill set, and yet it may be a requirement of their job. So AI can actually professionalize the language or make it funnier or wittier. There's a lot of things. I'm embarrassed to say that I can play with my own AI avatar, and sometimes he's funnier than I am, which I find funny.
Yes.
But
Yes.
there you have it. But so the use cases for copy, generating good kind of initial content copy is great. But I think where AI fails, and it will always fail, is in the ability to create that bridge of meaningful relationship between two people where you and I may have an understanding of something that AI can't replicate or simulate. Once we get to the kind of deeper meanings between a relationship between one person and another, AI can only simulate that. I think in terms of a good use case, we continue to let AI do the work of the volume-based understanding. That's where it's really at its best, where it sifts through a mountain and turns it into a stack of readable notes. That's great. It's the great Cliff Notes effect, you
Makes
know?
sense.
But where it can't, the problem with Cliff Notes, and it's always been this case, is you didn't really get the enjoyment of the story. You got the quick summarized notes. But if Lord of the Rings had been summarized into Cliff Notes, I don't think the experience would have been as meaningful. And I don't think the movie would have done as well. It would have been more like a 22-minute sitcom, right? Because
Right.
they're just the high points. I think AI, when we over rely on it for all the way through. So I think 24/7, 365 customer support, where you take the human out of the experience for the online person. I think there may be some impact on customer satisfaction if you don't put the human touch into the experience at all. I think, and of course, there's a danger to that because it's much cheaper to just hit click send and then
Of
have your
course.
AI do that. But I think the ultimate payoff, there may be like an uptick where statistically some group is going to see some sort of performance enhancement. But I think long term, you're going to see that the removal of the human element from the experience is going to be a detriment to building trust and loyalty. If you're only talking to a machine, how do you trust, you
Right.
know, who's programming the machine? So that's not me. I'm not one of those AI fear mongers that worries about the future. I think AI is a powerful tool for good. I think like any tool, it can be wielded irresponsibly. And yeah, for me, over reliance on anything is never good. So you got to temper it, or as I just joked to my brother, all things in moderation, including moderation. And so,
I
right.
like that. That's good. Where can people learn more about you and about Crateo online?
Yeah. So great. So we on LinkedIn, we have a newsletter called the Prospect Pulse that we putting out. Crateo.ai, the name of the company, is also our website. So we couldn't made that easier. And you can follow us on Facebook and you can follow us on Instagram. We happily take on all. We're really trying to build good relationships on LinkedIn. We have a YouTube channel. You can look up Crateo.ai on YouTube, and we post marketing videos and try to get some educational content out there. So A lot of ways that we want to help build awareness on what we're trying to do, Krateo.ai is trying to do. But I think also what the industry in general is trying to get us toward, which is a safer online experience with, higher quality data that ultimately leads to you and me, Jeff, being happier at the end of the day with the experience. And I don't want to always, it's not bad out there. I think it's getting better. And I think AI is helping. And we're trying to push that help as fast as we can so that the experience continues to be meaningful.
Outstanding. Well, Clay, it's been a great conversation. Thanks for being on SaaS Fuel.
Jeff, this was great. Appreciate your time. It was great to see you again.
You too.
Take care.
Thanks again, Clay, for coming on the show and sharing your journey and insights. You can learn more about Clay and Krateo at Krateo.ai. As always, all links, highlights, resources, and full show notes are available at saasfuel.com. And be sure to check us out on YouTube as well. Full episodes, video shorts, training, outtakes, lots more on there. And thought leaders share. Share this episode with the person you think who does the best content marketing, or maybe the worst. All up to you. I won't tell them which it was. But everyone who shares this week gets a binge-worthy content kit. It's Netflix, but for your marketing. Once prospects engage with one piece of your content, they can't stop consuming the rest of it. And no 5-second delay in between. Next thing, they're just hitting the book a demo or the buy button. Join us Thursday on our SaaS Fuel Expert Series, where my guest is Bradley Hamner, founder of Blueprint OS. We'll talk about the transition from working in your business to strategically working on it. We've all heard that for a long time, but how do we actually do it? We'll talk about that on the podcast. And the next Tuesday, we are kicking off SaaS Pricing Week with 2 awesome guests giving us the good, the bad, the ugly on pricing SaaS. We'll start Tuesday with Bill Wilson, founder and CEO of Pace Pricing. With over 20 years of experience and multiple successful exits, Bill helps companies stop guessing and build profitable, scalable pricing models for sustained growth. So we'll see you next time. And as always, enjoy the journey.
Thanks for listening to SaaS Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/SaaSfuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.
Let's go!